We are at it again, our underground wine event virtually. So sad. I miss you guys. You know, I absolutely, I feel like this is like, you know, one of our groups that hangs out after. We're the rowdy party, right, Laura? Afterwards, the after party. This is it.
I'm staying out of that. I wasn't there.
You were always there. Leo, you're off video. What happened to you? Make sure you get, there you go. You get your video back up. All right. So we've got tonight three, we're calling it the foreign invasion. And of course, you know, I've already objectified these gentlemen on Patreon, and we absolutely, you know, put their pictures up because they're just three hotties from foreign lands, and they have different philosophies as a result of it. And that's actually, it's not because you guys are so good looking that we put you together. It's more because you have different orientations. So I would like everyone to introduce themselves, and we'll go in alphabetical order. Lorenzo, you go first with Andis, then Leo, and then Oded. Please talk about your winery, the kind of wine that you make, and then we'll get into some detailed questions.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. I mean, it's finally 2021. You know, we've been looking forward to this new year, and thank you to Laura and Elizabeth for introducing us to this amazing cult, to this group that it's amazing. I mean, it's been the highlight of my California journey. So since I moved to California, I've never met so many cool people. Like, because usually when I meet, or like, I want to hang out for a few minutes and then move on. Versus you guys, I wish we can spend more time together. It's really been an honor for me.
Tell us about Andis.
Yeah. So I'm Lorenzo. I'm one of the partners at Andis Wines. As a small company, we kind of wear multiple hats. I work directly with the consulting winemaking team, with the winemakers, and I oversee pretty much from what vineyards and we're harvesting and what grapes we're working with, and then have some of my inputs on the philosophy of winemaking, because Andis Wines, it's a modern winery with California roots, but we look more forward to bridge that gap between old world and new world. We hopefully will get to there one day. I always tell people that Andis Wines, it's a old world wine with the California sunshine. I can't do nothing about that. I could put umbrellas around my vineyard. That's what we have, and that's what we have to deal with it. As a winery, we're more known for traditionally grapes grown in the foothills, like Zinfandel. Our vineyards dates back to the 1800s. One of the vineyards actually is planted in 1869, which dates one of the oldest vineyards in California. But as well, new addition to our region, like Italian grapes, like Barbera, and Schioppettino is the most recent one. But as well, Sauvignon Blanc. We work with Rhone grapes, Petit Syrah, and Grenache. But our main focus, it's Zinfandel and single vineyard Zinfandels. We as well rescued a few vineyards that were designated to be grafted over more traditionally grapes. We rescued a 45-year-old Semillon, which it's unique for California to have an old vine head-trained Semillon, and that's our pride. To be honest, we've been featured in a few publications as one of the top Semillon producers, and that's lucky. It's not that smart. We just got lucky.
That wine is absolutely amazing. So Lorenzo is our representative from the Sierra Foothills region, and he is going to talk about that. And of course, we did a podcast about it where Lorenzo went into a lot of great detail about it, and we'll talk more about Andis in a second. Leo, would you like to please talk about Leo Steen? Leo's name is Leo Hansen, not Leo Steen. So Leo, if you could unmute your mic, and explain what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leo Steen Hansen. Sorry for the confusion. So my middle name is Steen, family middle name on my dad's side, where I grew up in Denmark in the restaurant trade. My parents were my dad was a chef and my mom was working at the hotel as well. So I think naturally I just had a passion for food and wine. I grew up working with my parents at a fairly early age after school, and ended up going into this business, the restaurant business, even I was told not to, for good reasons. But so I did, and chose the sort of front of the house. And long story short, I kind of fell in love with the food and wine more so probably than the long hours and the nights. But took my sommelier exam in Denmark back in the later 90s and wanted more. I wanted to learn more and see more sort of practical come work a harvest. So I ended up in Healdsburg, where Oded and I, we are sitting right now. I actually came to Healdsburg for the harvest of 1999. And I lived just down the street from where I'm sitting right now. So it's kind of funny. I was supposed to be here for 3 months, and needless to say, this is a long internship now, 21 years later. So it's been a long journey of just exploring, and it's like, I don't know, I don't think you can ever get enough of, another vintage you want to finish and things just move on. So I worked around for another winery for many years, and I've been in Australia working harvest, etc. So, but my own brand I founded in 2004 while I was working as a sommelier at the Hotel Healdsburg. That was fairly new, open back then, and has been focused around Chenin Blanc, which I believe we're going to get into further on. So
that's a great summary. So Oded.
Hi everybody, I'm Oded Shakked. Hopefully you can pronounce it by the end of the podcast. And I was born in Israel. I was an embassy brat, so I was raised a little bit all over the planet. And in Israel, we have mandatory military service. So I went to my military service 3 years from 18 to 21. I grew up I was born in Haifa, which is like the Israeli San Francisco, right on top of Mount Carmel. And then most of my life, though, I grew up in Herzliya, which is a little beach town just north of Tel Aviv. So I was one of the first surfers in my hometown, one of the group of first surfers in Israel. And after my military service, I, rather than just go straight into school, I always thought I was going to go study architecture, but I just didn't feel like doing it. So I built surfboards for a living, and I used to work 9 months out of the year and then go surfing for 3 months every year. And the waves in Israel are fun, but they're kind of tiny. So we used to go to the closest place with big waves, nicer waves, was the Atlantic coast of Europe. So we used to go to France, to Biarritz, to Osgore, Andai, to Portugal, and to Spain. And over there, I kind of got exposed to wine. And the truth is that I didn't know, but I kind of fell in love with it there, especially when we actually dropped a friend in Pomerol to work for a harvest because he was going to save money and go to India. And then I came back to Israel after one of the trips, and a very good friend of the family who actually was at UC Davis doing a sabbatical in chemistry told me, you could actually study winemaking. And this is way back in 83. To make a long story short, in 84, I packed my bags, went to UC Davis to study winemaking, and never looked back. I just feel I'm so lucky. I just found what really fits me. I still love doing it. I'm still learning. I was really, really lucky that while I was at UC Davis, I had both a champagne experience. I worked for Domaine Chandon, sparkling wine, which is one of the most technical wines to produce. And then in 87, I was in Bordeaux. I was the first American intern at Chateau Lafite. So when I got back, I got hired right away as an intern for the Jordan family right here in Healdsburg. So in 1988, I show up in Healdsburg. I think I was the only male without the belt buckle the size of a dinner plate. And but I fell in love with this town. I always tell people I literally felt there's roots growing from the bottom of my feet. Took 2 years before I could find an espresso in this town. I stayed with the Jordan family for 18 years at J. Vineyards and Winery, making sparkling wines, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris. But one of my loves has always been Syrah. It actually started in France. I've always liked Syrah, and the Jordan family did not want to do any, so I basically started my own little brand while I was still working for the Jordan family. And since I only thought it was going to be a hobby, I called it Longboard Vineyards, so I could tax deduct my surf trips. But life just happens, and in '05 I left the corporate world and have been concentrating on nothing but longboard vineyards ever since. I have almost 7 acres of my own. I grow Merlot, Malbec, Syrah, a couple of Petit Syrah and other blenders into the Syrah, and now Grenache and Pinot Noir also. And the rest I buy from growers that are all around me. So I've been making wine in this region for 30-something years. And somehow I'm still enjoying it. So Longboard is a small brand, mostly direct, almost none in distribution, very little distribution. And I think mostly I'm about learning, about complexity, and above all about food, because I'm a foodie. I like to cook, I like to eat, and it's all, when I make a wine, I think about, okay, what am I going to cook with it? These days, anything that goes with the Dungeness crab, that's what I like to start with. Starting right now here.
I have a question for each of you also, because you are all have, Oded, I'm going to include you in this, even though you're Israeli. Lorenzo, you are Albanian and Italian. Leo, you're a Dane, and Oded, you're a mutt with, some Israeli and some of everything, really. So what about the European sensibility? How does that play into the way that you look at wine? And not just that, as you sort of came here, I'm sure, I know Lorenzo and I have had a lot of conversations about this because it was really it's so different here, right? The priorities are different. The ideas about wine are different. People want sippers, right? They're not always thinking about food. I think in Europe, it's perfectly acceptable to make a wine that we might find unbalanced in some ways, but because it's going to go with the food. But here, that's not quite as acceptable. After you have each been here for a period of time, do you feel that you have kept your international global sensibility, or have you just sort of morphed into it? Leo, you start.
I mean, that's a good question. I'll have to say, if I back up, I try and say, when people ask me what's your wine you want to be in France or anywhere else, if we're talking Chenin Blanc, I always say, I make wine in California, and I'm proud of making wine in California, and that doesn't mean they can't be done in a style that is leaner, low alcohol, what have you, as a new or an old version of California wine, how they used to be made. And so, but to your point, I think, I'm very connected. I try and teach my kids Danish. I go there, and I take my family as well, at least once a year and stuff. And so I feel like, there's definitely a connection. If it's not intentional, but wines are, for me, made to be enjoyed with food and at the table. And some wines might be a little aggressive on that account in my lineup, where some of them are really, they really need the food to round them off, or to soften them and to show the true colors and show how they really work together. So I don't make what I would call cocktail wines, on its own, something that's just a big bomb of a lot of different stuff. I play more on something that's acidic, low alcohol, that is savory, and it's okay to be herbaceous or green. If it's red or white, doesn't matter. So
yeah, I think that goes back to this friend of mine who's been on the podcast a few times. He unfortunately has since left wine, but we had this conversation, I think it was on the show, maybe it was privately, about he's from the UK, and he made wine in France. He was a rosé guy. This is Ian Rennick for patrons and other people who listen to the show a lot. He always used to say, like, you know what? There are a lot of French wines and Italian wines that we would consider them imbalanced, but if they were not if we had like a full round wine that was perfect to drink, then it wouldn't go with food, because you need some things sticking out. You know, you need some increased acidity, or you need, you know, a little bit of a lower alcohol thing, or you need sometimes residual sugar to balance the screaming acidity to make the wine go with food. And I think it's just a very different sensibility that you're articulating. Lorenzo, how do you feel about that?
Not to repeat what Leo said, but for me, I never ever looked wine as just simply a beverage. Actually wine came after. It's food and wine. It's not wine and food. And it's always, for me, at come around the table. For me, I can't even imagine to drink. I do drink wine right now. I'm drinking wine without a food, and it would be. Would not be fair saying that, oh, I never drink wine without food. But when we put a bottle of wine together on the process, when we're like composing a blend or a varietal, we always think about what this wine will pair for, and we try to come around of a stylistic of cuisine. And yes, acidity, it's the most important thing in a wine, like seasoning and salt, fat, and other things are in addition. And those components, for me, if they don't blend together, I don't enjoy either of them. You can eat the best dish in the world with the worst wine, and you're not going to have that experience. You're not going to remember neither of them. And that's what I've tried so hard in the last 6 years that I've been in California to not lose it. Even that sometimes I've entered the process of Californications, you know, and you have to not to lose it. I'm still married.
Can I just point out, which Leo talked about his restaurant background. You said absolutely zero about how you had the most popular restaurant in the city of Florence for like 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, and you just walked away from it when it was at its absolute height. So Lorenzo is a restaurateur, and also I think that the thing is that you're Italian, and I mean, you're mostly Italian, right? I mean, and so growing up in Italy, having that sensibility, you just don't think about it's like the Holy Trinity. It's bread, olive oil, and wine, right? I mean, like, what else is there?
Yeah, actually today somebody asked me, I hired an Italian guy to help me work, and as well so I can keep practicing the Italian language. We were thinking today on the road is like, what is setting up a table for dinner? It was always olive oil, wine at the table, and I cannot even imagine. And that's you said it right. It's a trilogy. You can't go away from them. You take one out, it's like a chair that it's not balanced anymore. You're always gonna wobble. And for me, wine is a component of the food, as vice versa. You know, food is a component of the wine, and that's what I think I strive the most here at Andis Wines. In the last 6 years, I insisted, and I've been lucky enough that my partners in business have allowed me to implement that stylistic of European-driven style wine and acid-driven wine, balanced wine. I wish I could say that our wines are like at what is considered low alcohol, but it's Sierra Foothills. You know, I mean, if you start to move away from, if you force something that is not naturally done, you will end up with a product that, yes, you have a number on the back that measure the alcohol, but it's not going to be pleasant. You know, there are some numbers that you have to respect. It's Mother Nature. You can't. You heard
me in the alcohol podcast say, I don't care about the number. I care about the balance. I think that's very true. You know, there's many lessons to be learned from places like Sierra Foothills, Walla Walla, Washington, Châteauneuf de Pape, you know, some parts of Southern Italy. You know, you're not going to get a low alcohol level in an Aglianico from Southern Italy and have it be any good. So, I mean, it's all about the whole total package. Absolutely. Oded, can you talk about your sensibility and how that has come about? I mean, from the Israeli perspective, wine, you know, I mean, you know, we're big Jews. We besides the Manischewitz. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, you know, Israel didn't have a huge wine culture when you were growing up. I mean, it just started. So, I mean, we talk about this all the time, that it's like moving along, not quite there yet, blah, blah, blah. But so what, you know, what about from your days of working in these amazing vineyards, tasting all this wine while you were surfing, while you were traveling, stuck with you or still sticks with you? And I know you go back to Israel, or you pre-COVID, you did a lot.
So first of all, Israel is definitely developing, and that's awesome. Growing up, since I'm of German and Czech origin, we always had grandparents always had wine on the table, lunch and dinner. So I was exposed. One side, grandpa was a big grappa drinker, which like made me never want to drink grappa again in my life. But there was definitely not a real tradition when I left Israel in the early 80s, but it's whole changed since then. But I gotta say that it kind of ties into what's happening here. I'm an American now, and I'm really proud of how we changed the whole food and wine culture in America in really in the span of 30 years. I mean, I love to tell the story of going to a San Francisco white tablecloth restaurant and seeing somebody order a well done filet mignon and right away putting A1 sauce on it and ketchup. And I raised kids in Hillsburg, and you know, when they were 10 years old, they were saying, "Dad, can we have sushi today?" So that's a tremendous change. That's something that took 700 years in Europe. We are fast learners in here, and that's why I think stuff that we used to rely or think about in the wine industry in the early 80s, alcohol levels. Everybody wanted big alcohol because it was all about the trophy, and then it was all about the ratings. I mean, in Europe, who cares about the rating? If somebody gave it a 90 whatever, one of my best wines, I'm really proud. I got a 78 rating on it. It's one of the wines that we love.
The
The
best.
same wine. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's my Decline Syrah. It got a 78
that's
from
a
a
great
nameless
wine.
publication, and a British publication gave it a 5-star review with like the best example of Syrah. That's what Syrah should be. So it's like, who cares? It's like,
And it's, well, I
so
mean, we've
we've
talked about this many
developed, and
times.
I think,
It's not, it's just a game. It's a game.
yeah,
And I think, you don't have to play it. All right.
but
So
it doesn't
Lorenzo,
happen overnight. And I think the continuum, and I think we're in a good space. We've developed this in America. So now there's a food and wine tradition, and then people can leave behind formulas and perceptions and just put it in your mouth and see if you like it. Play with it.
all right, we're going to go get a little specific here. So Lorenzo, talk to us about what it is like to make wines in Sierra Foothills and what's good about it, what's hard about it, and the fact that you're doing, Italian varietals. I mean, do you see any similarities to where, to certain regions of Italy? I mean, is this like Southern Italy? Are you having that in mind at all? Or are you just totally in the mindset of the foothills and what's your mindset?
So making wine in the foothills, I think that if I have to pick one word, I would say it's freedom, because I can do whatever I want. I mean, there are 168 grapes that grow in the foothills, so I don't have to respond to any associations or to give a check to anybody and say, hey, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? But at the same time, I consider it very lucky and very fun to do this in the foothills because the microclimate it's very similar to what I would consider the Mediterranean microclimate. And just to tie the answer with European and Italian, what region would be? I think the foothills, it's hard to pin it to a region. Southern Italy would be the closest one, but at the same time, our second most popular grape is Barbera, which grows in completely the opposite. I almost made a wine called Garibaldi because he was known for unifying Italy, south and north. I wanted to make a Barbera Primitivo and just called it Garibaldi, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it. But so the fun part, it's I'm open to so many grapes. I have grapes from Portugal, from Spain, from France, from Italy. But the hurdle is. How can I say it politically correct so I don't get in trouble?
Right, we got in trouble last. There's not a whole lot of other people around.
Yeah.
You're a little bit of an island, right? It's taking a longer time to coalesce.
correct. I
Is it
think
that? Yes.
Foothills, it's moving towards what Sonoma and Napa have done, and then we're just gonna get there. We're right behind them. You know, it's just a matter of time. Growers are open mind now to do different farming, and it's been amazing. More cold winemakers and great wineries are moving in our region, and that it's helping us raise the bar as a whole region.
But also raise the price of grapes, right?
That's
the problem.
the issue that I have here, because out of region wineries, thanks to that 5 to 15, 25%, it had raised significantly by over 100% the cost of our wine, but of our grapes, but the wine yet is not there to reflect the market. So and we made a decision a few years ago to move away from a small appellation to a bigger appellation, just to give a sense of place to the market, which is the opposite what they do in Europe. You know, in Europe, smaller appellation you go, more prestige it is, and the Foothills is the opposite. You know, I think it's Foothills is right there. I mean, we're really very close to over the hump, and then from there it's just going to be easy. Actually, we got the first 100 point, not us as a winery, as a region. One of my neighbor winemakers got 100 points on the Syrah, and that was a huge boom in the market, and open doors to other small wineries.
You don't say that in front of Oded, because he's gonna cut. Now he's gonna come and but he's gonna boost the prices. You know, listen to him. Look at him. He's writing it down.
Yeah, no, scores is like the credit check. You know, it doesn't matter much. You end up paying always whatever the interest it is. So I think Foothills is doing some great things. I mean, and Andis Wines is on par with that. We're introducing new grapes, new varietals, new winemaking techniques, new farming techniques that the region is embracing it, and it's applying it. Right now, we're fully sustainable farming. You know, we're planning to go towards an organic. So we're trying to be more involved with Mother Nature. I mean, what California has seen in the last 2 years, the temperatures have skyrocketed. I mean, the average temperature has gone up, and we're trying to leave a smaller footprint behind, that the following generation do not have to pay our mistakes and our price. So it's Foothills. It's fun. I mean, Foothills is really the wild west of the winemaking. You can do whatever you want, however you want it, and then you always will be able to find somebody that will enjoy, as long as you put love and passion behind it. If you do something that you are proud of what you do, and then it's always going to be somebody that, when they open that bottle of wine, they perceive your passion and the quality. You know, the quality is always.
What is your favorite wine that you make? You prefer the Italian varietals, or do you like, I mean, the Semillon,
Semillon is by far my favorite.
It's fantastic. If you're listening and you have not had, what's it called? The Dillian Vineyard. Oh my gosh. Like, what a wine, really. I mean, really. But I think the Grand Père, the oldest wine. I mean, the Zinfandel is fantastic. The Cab Franc is great. I mean, every wine is really great. But so you like the Semillon is your favorite?
Semillon is my number one wine that I prefer to drink. I'm a white wine lover. Just keeps me always awake, and because I drink a lot, so if I drink red wine,
because you're a winemaker and you have small children, so yeah. That's just, you're done. Yes, you're done.
Barbera, like if I have to pick a red wine, Barbera is it's my Italian flag, my Italian proudness. And actually, I named the Barbera di Amador, just kind of like to play on with the word Barbera d'Alba and Barbera d'Asti. So those are my two. Those, beside my children, I think those are my two other children. So I really love what we do. So it's been fun. Italian varietals are fun to make, but at the same time, sometimes I think about Italy, and then I have so much pressure because I want to achieve what is achieved in Italy, and
You've been at it a few thousand years more, so don't put yourself in that bad position.
It might be Lorenzo the younger will do it, not the
All right. Leo, I want to ask you about Chenin and how you are able to do so much with this grape that has really been forgotten. And I mean, it is like the trash grape of the Central Valley, used in jug wine because it throws acidity even if they overcrop it. And yet it, if you do it right, I mean, obviously some of the most famous places in the Loire Valley make gorgeous Chenin. I'm sure that's inspirational to you, but how do you do that? And is Chenin your real passion?
Absolutely. I mean, as when I worked in Europe as a sommelier, I would go to the Loire Valley, and so there was always a passion for the variety, for the region in general. And when I started working at the Charlie Palmer's Dry Creek Kitchen back in 2001 at Hotel Hillsburg, I did see that there was a niche for interesting whites. As a Chenin Blanc, there used to be one of the most planted varieties in California, and I think the saying is in Napa Valley, the whole western bench, if people want to buy Chenin Blanc, they had to take some of the Cabernet. I mean, it was planted all over on really what's today's prime expensive land. But to your point, Elizabeth, yeah, it maintains acidity in this Mediterranean climate. It can produce a tremendous yield if it's in the Central Valley, irrigated and done correctly in terms of canopy management. And that way, it was just something that the generation before us, or 2 generations before us, were just drinking. It was bulk wine. It wasn't labeled as Chenin Blanc. It was just a big jug wine, generally with some residual sugar. So back to the restaurant. When I worked there, the restaurant was, the program was dedicated to Sonoma County, and there was very few, I would say, wines that was out of the ordinary at the time, which was Chardonnay in many shades. Pinot Gris was hot, Viognier was hot, Sauvignon Blanc as well. But there wasn't that other category. So there was sort of I think I was like, I knew there was a few vineyards around, and unfortunately, and one reason I work with growers and I try and work with them and pay them for the per acre for the land rather than the tonnage, because I want to make sure these wines stay in the ground and these small pieces of history doesn't disappear and become Chardonnay or another housing community or whatever. And I think that's been obviously another problem in California. But so I now work with 3 different Chenin Blanc vineyards from Mendocino down to Santa Barbara County in the Santa Ynez Valley. So it's a big logistic stretch, but very exciting to work with. They're all old wines because I feel like and more coastal if I could. So I don't work with the Central Valley nor the Delta area, but more the coastal regions. So
well, that's where a lot of the old stuff is there too, right? The old sort of.
Yeah, I know there's some up by Lorenzo too. There's a few pockets, but these are small pieces around scattered that wasn't pulled out and has been kept and been sold and used in major blends. My sort of flagship wine from Dry Creek Valley is called Saini Vineyards. This vineyard used to go to Gallo back in the 80s. Later on, it went to Corbel for sparkling wine. So it was cropped heavily and was used for its acidity and picked obviously early for the sparkling project. I started working with them back in 2005. First vintage was, 2006. And it was definitely a hand sale. I came out with this racy, green apple, savory, high acid wine that needed food. Back to the point, it would lift flavors in a ceviche, oysters, or what have you, crab, this time of year. It was definitely a hand sale, I'm telling you. So I remember there used to be a lot more of it. Unfortunately, a portion had to be replanted due to some Pierce's disease, but we've kept some of it, and the growers have been fantastic to work with, the Saini family, and we worked closely together on this project. And today they have their own brand, so it's kind of fun to see growers, kind of transition too with their name and move on. So
As long as they keep selling fruit to you, right? You can keep
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
For sure. No, we have a long relationship and a nice long contract, so that hopefully works since it's in writing. Then later on, I added on a vineyard down in Santinez, exactly 350 miles down from where we are here in Hillsburg in Sonoma County. And a story in 2009 when I worked at Stumela Vineyards, which I've been winemaker for since 2002, still consults for them. I had an intern and she would bring these wines around. It had no identity really on the label, no variety, not even alcohol. It's just a white table wine from a producer in the San Ynez Valley. So I kind of tracked it down because it was Chenin Blanc and had a very nice sense of minerality. And it took me down to an area in the western part of this region. It turns out this vineyard, and this is the bottle here, the vineyard is called Jurassic Park, not something I came up with, but it's rich in fossils, hence the name. It's a sandy soil, some limestone, some calcareous soil. It is an own rooted vineyard planted the same year as the other one I work with up in Dry Creek, the Seine. And I came down there and I was checking it out, and I asked if I could, if they want to work with me and I could buy some grapes, and they were like, yeah, we are pulling this vineyard out. You can take as much as you want.
Oh.
They had already pulled a section out, and so I took a little bit. This is back in 2011, so 10 years ago. I harvested 3 tons. I made the wine, and today, to put it in perspective, how Chenin Blanc, I guess is my point of this long story, is that how it's transitioned, how it's coming back to something it wasn't, that people now really renowned producers are replanting or planting vineyards. But today, this vineyard is now the vineyard they pulled out back then. This portion is replanted. Plus, I want to say there's maybe 14 different buyers from this vineyard. And
Wow.
if I ask, can I get more than my little section that I gardened for now 10 whatever years, they're like, no.
Wow. I mean, that's a credit to you also, right?
Yeah,
I'm
not taking credit, but it's not just it's so many pieces in the making, but they promoted this variety, but a lot have happened in people's awareness and varieties and journalists writing about it. So that's been a lot of different moving parts, and which is so cool to see and a bit a part of, and seeing how things have transitioned. And it's okay that the wine is, and again, it's not about the number, but it's okay that the wine is lower alcohol or higher acid, and there are people out there selling it. There are people out there promoting it. Sommeliers and wine, wine buyers.
Yeah, it's making it. All right, we're going to talk more about that with the patrons but we're going to wrap this up for Facebook Live with a couple questions for Oded, and then we'll stay on and talk to the patrons. But Oded, so I mean, what you have your own vineyard. You talked about that. You contract fruit. You said you've been around for a little while, just a little while. And so what has changed since you started? Industry, climate change, how you do things, all of that. How do you see this as like evolution or
Right. So let's start with the
what has
easy
devolved?
Let's start with the easy part. The easy part is climate. And I can tell you definitely that being in the Russian River since '88, you definitely see a change. We used to have way more foggy days. Harvest was way later, so we're harvesting much sooner now. There's less fog, for sure, absolutely. More dry years, and I have not had to do any frost protection in at least 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
So that's definitely, so anybody wants to claim that they're, now I have to step back because I'm a scientist, I'm a science geek, and I know that, yes, definitely, mankind has contributed a lot to this, but the planet has been warming up for the past 17,000 years since the last ice age. So, 8 years, even 20 years is nothing this can change. It's part of continuum. So, but definitely I can see and you do feel that. That's one of the great things about being a winemaker and a grape grower is you remember every year, you remember every spring, because every morning you walk the vines, you see what's happening, you smell the smells, you feel the temperature. So from that point of view, we are definitely in a period of change, and it's been kind of fast lately, and especially with the last couple of years of fires in our area. So that's that aspect of just grape growing and climate terroir, whatever you want to call it. What bothers me more about what has changed in the wine industry, and funnily enough, it's also the same thing in the surfing industry, is that as wine becomes more popular and as it becomes such a big industry, I really am bothered by the fact that everything is flowing to the lowest common denominator. So people like Leo, that's working with Chenin Blanc, is great. It's just like the Slow Food Society managed to support small people who were raising heritage turkey breeds that otherwise were going to disappear because they don't produce chests, turkey breasts that are 20 pounds, but they're way more flavorful. So I think people like Leo, people like what they do in the Sierra, and I think I'm trying to do it with Longboard, promote stuff that's not just formula
Coca-Cola.
wine that starts drinking. They all taste the same. You can't tell some Pinot Noirs from Syrah or Cabernet these days. That bothers me. That bothers me. The fact that it's kind of the factories, the big things. That's concerning
It's
because us, the small
homogenization, right?
guys.
It's homogenization
Yeah.
and it's Coca-Cola. So it doesn't matter what vintage it is because it's Coke. Every year
Exactly.
it's the same thing. And then I think the problem is that it trains people to think that that's
Mhm.
what wine is supposed to be. And then when they encounter a longboard wine that's different from the one from last year because it was a different vintage, it it can be, well, I don't like that anymore. Well, it's the vintage, you know what I mean? So that's getting away from the land. It is very tough. Obviously, this is partially why we do this, right? So the last question that I have, and we're running a little bit late, so just real quick from the three of you is, what do you want people to know about small wineries?
We're like the farmers market, right? You could go to, you could probably buy on Amazon tomatoes, right? Or you could go to Safeway or whatever and buy tomatoes. But if you want something good, you either grow it in your backyard or you go to and almost everybody in the US now has some kind of farmer market close by. You want to go to your grower, which is local, and is trying to do this the best way they can. I mean, people ask me about organic and biodynamic, and I'm telling them, you know what? I live in the vineyard. My kids drink the water from the well in the vineyard. Why would the hell would I want to spray anything in the vineyard? So that's what we represent, and that's what I think people should know about small wineries is that these are real people. That you know we really try to do something that is possibly a little bit more perishable, possibly a touch more expensive, but there's a reason for that. It's really a product that's more real and tastes better.
Leo?
I think, I mean, to a lot of the points Oded made, his family, small operations, a lot of small handcrafted wines that just deserve attention. And obviously, especially this time, and what everybody gone through the last year or so is, it's difficult to be visual on a big scene where there's a lot of big players that can outnumber you. So I think, honestly, I just try and make honest wines that has a sense of place and sense of variety that works, as we've been going over with food. And if people try them, that's all I can ask for. And hopefully the best case scenario is when they try them in the right format or the right setting and the right pairing. And that's hopefully those people will come back. And that's what we do. That's why we work hard. We wear many hats, from working in the winery to the vineyard to sales and other things. And it's definitely a love affair, and I love it. So it's great.
That's awesome. All right, Lorenzo, quickly, and then we're gonna sign off of Facebook, and then the patrons will ask you some questions. But
How people will remember a small winery. I think small wineries build memories. You know, we don't end up just by selling you a bottle of wine. We tell you a story and our passion that you will remember that because you got to know these amazing people, that the story doesn't end up just you purchasing the wine. It's going to continue when you drink the wine, and that's something that you will the quality. I mean, quality is there. Quality of memories and hospitality is something a small winery, a small business will always put you in first place than the dollars.
Well, that is a great end to the Facebook Live.